Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. You know how some people say they felt the moment their life changed? Like a loud bang, a punch to the chest, something big and dramatic. Mine wasn't like that. It started quiet, just a whisper in the back of my head. At first I brushed it off. I was tired. Work had been rough. Bianca had been distant, sure, but marriages go through phases, right? But then it didn't go away. The whisper turned into a constant hum, the kind that gets under your skin and makes your stomach twist. I couldn't explain it at the time, but I knew something wasn't right with Bianca. It was little things at first. Bianca used to leave her phone lying around all the time, unlocked, face down on the counter, charging in the hallway overnight. It never mattered, because we had nothing to hide. But lately, it was always on her, always locked. She'd carry it from room to room like it was a newborn. She wouldn't even go to the bathroom without it. I remember one night, she forgot it on the kitchen island for maybe 30 seconds, and when she realized, she sprinted back like she'd left the oven on. That was the first time I felt it in my gut. Something's off. One night I walked into the living room to grab my phone charger, and she jumped. I mean, really jumped, like I caught her doing something she shouldn't. She fumbled with her phone, pressed something fast, shoved it into her hoodie pocket like I didn't notice. "What are you doing?" I asked. She gave me a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Jesus, Larry, you scared me." "Who were you texting?" She blinked too fast. "What?" "No one. Just some work stuff." "Work at 11:30 at night?" She rolled her eyes and stood up. "God, Larry. Not everything is suspicious. You need to stop being so paranoid." Paranoid. That word stuck in my chest like a fishbone. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being observant. There's a difference. After that night, things started clicking. It was like once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. She started going out more often. Drinks with the girls, she'd say. Networking dinners. But she'd never tell me who she was with. I'd ask, "Which girls?" And she'd say something vague like, "You don't know them." Every time. Once I offered to pick her up, just to be nice. She flat out refused. "No, I already have a ride," she said. "Who?" "I'll Uber." I checked the app later. No Uber trip. That's when I noticed her scent had changed. She used to wear vanilla and sandalwood. Soft, familiar. Now there was cologne. Heavy, musky, and definitely not mine. There were other signs, too. Her laundry changed. I found new lingerie I didn't recognize. Pieces she'd never worn around me. I found receipts in the trash for lunches she never told me about. One time, I even found a movie ticket for a film she always said she couldn't stand. "Didn't you say you were working late Tuesday?" I asked her once. "Yeah, I had a deadline." I held up the stub. "Then how'd this end up in your coat pocket?" She looked at it like she was trying to remember what day it was. "Oh, right. I went with Melissa after work. Last minute." Melissa, her coworker, had moved to Denver 3 months ago. That's when I stopped asking. I realized something important. Bianca wasn't just lying. She was comfortable doing it. She thought I'd never dig deeper. Thought I was just some boring husband too tired from work to notice. But I noticed. Still, I waited. I didn't want to believe it. We'd been married 8 years. We owned a house, had plans, built a life. But deep down, I knew. Bianca was slipping away from me, and someone else was pulling her. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I watched, quietly. And then I started digging. I didn't want to accuse her without proof. I checked our bank statements. Bianca was careful. Nothing obvious. But I noticed a second debit card tied to a joint savings account, one we hadn't used in years. Small charges, coffee shops, gas stations, hotel lounges. Spread out, spaced just enough not to raise flags. I checked her calendar. She had started marking work retreats, conferences, and girls' spa weekends every few weeks. But none of it lined up with anything her job had ever done before. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I installed a tracker in her car, slipped under the dashboard where she'd never see it. One Saturday, she told me she was driving to a coworker's lake house. Girls only, she said. She even packed a tote with wine and candles. I smiled and kissed her goodbye, told her to relax and have fun. An hour after she left, I opened the tracker app. She wasn't heading north to the lake. She was driving downtown. Then she stopped. A high-rise. Same building, same spot. 3 weekends in a row. Different times, but always the same place. I didn't go there. Not yet. But the pit in my stomach turned into a brick. That night when she came back, I watched her walk through the door like nothing had happened. She kissed my cheek and smiled. She even brought me a muffin, like it was some kind of joke. I stared at that muffin for 10 minutes before I tossed it in the trash. That's when I knew watching wasn't enough. I had to be sure. One Thursday night I told her I had a last-minute conference 2 towns over. I'd be gone overnight. Left her a fake itinerary on the kitchen counter, even packed a suitcase with a suit and tie. She barely looked at it. "Okay. Drive safe," she said, not even glancing up from her phone. That's when I knew. She didn't care anymore. I was a ghost in my own house. I waited down the street that night, parked in a neighbor's driveway. At exactly 10:52 p.m., the front door opened. Bianca stepped out like she was walking into a dream. Hair curled, heels clicking down the driveway. Tight jeans, black jacket, full makeup, done up in a way she never did for me anymore. She didn't look nervous. She looked excited. I picked up my phone and snapped a photo through the windshield. One with her locking the door behind her, another as she got into her car. I followed her from 2 blocks behind, headlights off until we hit the main road. No hesitation in her driving. She knew where she was going. Same route, same destination. She pulled into the high-rise like she'd done it 100 times before. The security gate opened for her. She didn't buzz. That meant someone inside had already cleared her, or she had a code. Either way, it wasn't her first visit. She parked, stepped out of the car, adjusted her jacket, and walked toward the lobby with her phone pressed to her ear, laughing. I took another photo. That one hit me harder than I expected. Her face lit by the soft golden lights of the lobby entrance, eyes bright, lips curled in a smile meant for someone else. The kind of smile I hadn't seen in months. She looked alive, like this was her real life, and I was the commercial break she had to sit through. She walked through the doors and vanished. I waited. 2 full hours. No movement. Just the occasional rumble of the elevator, a few cars pulling in and out, someone walking their dog across the street. At 1:17 a.m., the doors slid open again. Bianca came out. Hair messier now, jacket unzipped. She had one hand in her pocket and the other still holding her phone. She was talking again, smiling, nodding, laughing. I took one more picture. Her, mid-laugh, walking back to her car like she'd just left a movie theater. She wasn't sneaking around like someone hiding an affair. She was walking like a woman who believed she'd gotten away with everything. And maybe she had. Until now. That broke something in me. Not just anger. Clarity. Cold and sharp. I didn't follow her after she left. I stayed there, parked on the side street, letting it sink in. Everything was over. The trust, the marriage, the life we'd built. All of it had already ended. I just hadn't accepted it yet. But a few minutes later, her car pulled up again. She got out, carrying a small bag, maybe something she picked up nearby. She went back inside the building like she was settling in for the night. Of course she was. She wasn't coming home. And neither was I. I drove back to our house, walked through the front door one last time. No hesitation, no second guessing. While Bianca was out living her second life, I was busy erasing mine. I packed every one of my things, carefully, methodically. Clothes, documents, my late father's watch, a box of photos I couldn't bear to leave behind. All of it went into 2 bags in the trunk of my car. Then I turned to the money. I had opened a private account weeks earlier just in case. That night I transferred everything we had saved into it. Clean sweep. The emergency fund, the vacation stash, even the old anniversary account Bianca had forgotten about. Gone. I left $27.50 in our joint account. Just enough for her to think the app was glitching for a second before the panic set in. Then I turned off my phone and smashed the SIM. The only thing I left behind was a message. I found it in a storage bin at the back of the closet. A napkin from our wedding scrapbook. The one Bianca had saved after I spilled red wine on it during our reception. She called it, Our first stain, laughed and said it was charmingly real. I flipped it over and wrote in black ink, "Funny how stains last longer than love. Enjoy your freedom. L." I folded it once and left it on the kitchen counter. The silence in that house was heavy. You'd think the place would scream at me, beg me to stay, or echo some final memory. But it didn't. It was just quiet. Dead quiet. I took one last look around, grabbed my keys, and walked out without locking the door behind me. Then I went to a hotel for the night. The next morning, before leaving town, I went to a lawyer's office to file for divorce. I didn't want to fight. I wanted out. I showed him the photos I had taken. Bianca leaving the house, outside the high-rise, laughing at 1 a.m. He didn't ask many questions, just nodded and got started. By noon I was halfway out of the city, driving west, windows down, the wind washing away the last 8 years. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't be able to follow. I found a quiet town, a few states over, small, unremarkable. I paid cash for a month-to-month rental. No social media, no email, no phone. I vanished so well I scared myself. The first week I didn't hear a thing. Then word started trickling in, through the backup number I'd given to a few people I still trusted. My cousin Janine called from back home. "Bianca showed up at my shop, crying, asking if I'd heard from you." I asked, "What did you say?" "I told her you're a grown man and if you're gone you have a reason." Then I hung up. Bianca showed up at my old job too, but I had already quit. She filed a missing persons report. The cops asked around, made a few calls, but it didn't go far. No foul play. I was legally allowed to disappear. She even showed up at my sister's door. Same script. "I just want to talk to him. I'm worried." My sister Mona didn't play games. "You weren't worried when you were screwing someone else in a downtown apartment, were you?" Bianca started crying, but Mona just shut the door. I started to think maybe that was the end. But Bianca? She doesn't lose. One Tuesday I was eating breakfast at a small diner. I was in my usual spot sipping black coffee halfway through my eggs when I saw her. Bianca. Hair pulled back, sunglasses on the table, sipping coffee like she belonged there. My stomach dropped. She looked up and met my eyes, then smiled. Like this was normal. Like nothing had happened. I stood. I should have walked out, but I didn't. Instead, I walked over and slid into the booth across from her. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "You're not that hard to find," she said, calm as ever. "You hired someone." She didn't deny it. "Private investigator, worth every penny." I felt sick. "What do you want, Bianca?" "To talk." "I don't have anything to say." "Well, I do," she said, folding her arms. "You humiliated me. You took everything and vanished. Who does that?" "Someone who got tired of being lied to," I said, sharper than I meant to. She stared at me, her voice softer now. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain." "You had months," I said. "But you were too busy sneaking off to hotel lobbies and high-rises." Her jaw tightened. She didn't try to deny it. "You don't understand." "No," I cut in, starting to rise from the booth. "You don't. You lost. You just didn't realize it yet. I filed for divorce, Bianca. We're done." She reached out, grabbed my wrist. "You think this is over?" I leaned in close. "I hope it is." Then I walked out. But I knew. It wasn't. The next day I packed again. This time not out of fear, but strategy. I drove back to my old hometown, not the one Bianca and I lived in. This was where I grew up. Quiet, familiar, off the radar. I kept my head down, reached out to people she never knew I still kept in touch with. Slowly, I started to learn that her world was falling apart. The guy she left me for? Gone. Turned out he had a wife of his own. Bianca didn't know. Her finances? A mess. She was borrowing money from friends, leaning on her parents, even trying to sell off jewelry I'd bought her. One day she reached out again. Somehow she had gotten my new number. It was a long, desperate message, but I didn't respond. I just changed numbers again. Weeks passed. Then months. She stopped trying. I stopped looking over my shoulder. Life got quiet, and stayed that way. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Thank you for watching.